There's very little design to note in the early banknotes. They're just paper with scribblings on it. The only design of note is that Britannia is featured in all of King George II's banknotes. This is the £500 banknote. Later the £300 came out, and then the £200 banknote. This is the £90, the £80, £70, £60, the £100 banknote, and from this point, banknotes got slightly narrower. The £50, £40, £30, £20, £15, and finally the £10. Under King William IV, this new £20 note came out. Under King George III, this £5 note came out, and this £2 note, and also this £1 note, which was nicknamed the Bradbury. It got this name because of the signature of Sir John Bradbury on every note. He was the permanent secretary of the Treasury at the time. Starting from this £1 note, the banknotes were the same size as we have nowadays, and they were also printed on postage stamp paper. King George III's notes no longer feature Britannia, and instead feature a portrait of himself. They also feature an elongated pound sign. It was also slightly transparent, with no design on the back. This was an advanced counterfeiting measure for the time. And as you can see here, they also experimented with using different coloured ink. This is the 10-shilling banknote, and this is the £1 banknote. This was the first banknote to actually be printed on banknote paper. This no longer has the elongated pound sign design. And lastly, it set out the common banknote layout that is still used to this day. This came out with another 10-shilling redesign, and yet another redesign happened under King George III. The front of these banknotes still featured a portrait of the king, however it also featured St George slaying a dragon. The reverse also featured the Houses of Parliament. Another redesign of the 10-shilling banknote came out with this, with Britannia on the front. However, the reverse just features 10 shillings. However, this redesign was short-lived, as they soon made way for a new coloured banknote standard. These banknotes were all in different colours to help differentiate between them. The front side featured the old design of Britannia featured on earlier banknotes, with the reverse side featuring ornate leaves. This is the red 10-shilling, the green £1, the blue £1, which was an emergency wartime issue, and from this point onwards, metal thread was also incorporated into the banknotes for the first time, this as a security feature. The reverse hand side of this also features St George slaying the dragon, also featuring the Bank of England along the top, and the purple 10-shilling, which was also an emergency wartime issue. This stayed the same until George VI, who released a new standard. The front side of this featured a helmeted Britannia to the left, and St George slaying the dragon at the bottom. The reverse featured the Lion of Honour holding a key. This design lasted for 15 years until a new standard was created. These were Queen Elizabeth II's first standard. This is the £1 banknote, and featured Queen Elizabeth II on the front, with the back featuring Britannia. The 10 shillings banknote was the same, but printed in red instead of green. And so was the blue £5 banknote. However, all of these banknotes had slightly different designs of Britannia, but none of them that notable. The £10 banknote was a multicoloured pale colour, with the front featuring Queen Elizabeth II and the back featuring a lion. There is also a tiny Britannia on the front of the banknote, but she's not the main point of interest. Things changed significantly with decimalisation. From this point onwards, banknotes would now feature Great Britons on them as well as the monarch. The first of these Great Britons was William Shakespeare, who we've been over before. So if I don't say anything about the Great Britain, it doesn't mean they haven't done anything, it just means that they've appeared on a coin before. So I'll only be going over Great Britons that have been newly added to banknotes. These banknotes were also printed on new threaded paper. The front of this banknote also features St George slaying the dragon in a stained glass window style, and a tiny Britannia. The reverse features a statue of William Shakespeare and a play of Romeo and Juliet in a stained glass window style. The second of these was the £5 Duke of Wellington, who was the former Prime Minister of the UK, a soldier, one of the greatest strategic minds in history, beating Napoleon. The front hand side features Queen Elizabeth II and an angel on a chariot, with a small Britannia at the bottom, with the reverse featuring Sir Arthur Wesley, the Duke of Wellington, and a battle scene in Spain in the centre. This is because much of the Napoleonic Wars for the Duke of Wellington was spent in Spain, helping the Spanish fight off Napoleon. The £10 note features Florence Nightingale. The front-hand side features Queen Elizabeth II, a floral pattern, and a tiny Britannia, with the reverse featuring Florence Nightingale in a hospital holding a lamp. Next we have the £1 Isaac Newton. The front-hand side features Queen Elizabeth II, and Greek symbols such as the Asclepius cross meaning healing, and also a tiny Britannia, with the right hand side featuring Isaac Newton, a telescope and some mathematics. Then we have the £50 Sir Christopher Wren banknote. The front hand side features Queen Elizabeth II, a phoenix on fire and a tiny Britannia, with the right hand side featuring Sir Christopher Wren and St Paul's Cathedral in the background. Sir Christopher Wren himself was a British architect. He pretty much rebuilt London after the Great Fire, and also built St Paul's Cathedral, which is his best known work. St Paul's Cathedral is also considered one of the most beautiful buildings in the world. And finally, he's a huge influence on architects around the world to this day. And then banknotes got yet another new standard. These banknotes were made with windowed thread, so they were slightly transparent. This is the George Stephenson £5 note. The front featured Queen Elizabeth II on the right and Britannia to the left, with the reverse featuring George Stephenson on the right and a rocket locomotive on the left. George Stephenson himself was a railway and industrial pioneer, and one of the key components for the Industrial Revolution. And then we have the Michael Faraday £20 note. The front again featured Queen Elizabeth II on the right and Britannia to the left. The reverse features Michael Faraday on the right and students in a lecture to the left. There's also a magno-electric spark apparatus he's showing to the students. Michael Faraday made huge contributions to electromagnetism and electrochemistry, and he's also one of the most influential scientists in history. Then we have the £10 Charles Dickens note, which yes, did come out after the £20 note. The front hand side features Queen Elizabeth II to the right and Britannia to the left, with the reverse featuring Charles Dickens to the right and a cricket match to the left. This is a cricket match from the Pickwick Papers, one of Charles Darwin's books. Then we have the £50 Sir John Houblon banknote. The front of this banknote yet again features Queen Elizabeth II on the right and Britannia to the left, with the reverse featuring John Houblon on the right and his house to the left. There's also a bank gatekeeper guarding the house. John Houblon was the first governor of the Bank of England and helped rebuild the Royal Navy. Then we have a whole new standard come out. This is the £20 Edward Elgar note. The front features Queen Elizabeth II on the right and a tiny Britannia to the left. The reverse features Edward Elgar to the right and Worcester Cathedral to the left. It also features St Cecilia to the left and an angel at the top. Edward Elgar is one of the greatest British composers in history. His best known works are the Pomp and Circumstance marches. And then we have the Elizabeth Fry £5 note. The front hand side yet again features Queen Elizabeth II on the right and a tiny Britannia to the left, with the reverse featuring Elizabeth Fry on the right and women and children in a workhouse to the left. Elizabeth Fry was a social reformer and known as the Angel of Prisons. She's best known for reforming prisons to help protect women and children from sexual exploitation. And then we have the £10 note Charles Darwin. The front features Queen Elizabeth II on the right and a tiny Britannia to the left, with the reverse featuring Charles Darwin on the right and a hummingbird to the left. It also features Charles Darwin's own magnifying glass on the left looking at flowers, and HMS Spiegel in the centre. And then we have the £20 Adam Smith banknote. The front hand side features Queen Elizabeth II on the right and the Bank of England in the centre. The reverse features Adam Smith on the left and workers in a pin factory in the centre. Adam Smith is known as the father of economics and capitalism. He was also a key figure in the Scottish Enlightenment and helped spread capitalism as we know it today. And then we have the Matthew Boulton and James Watt £50 note. The front hand side features Queen Elizabeth II on the right and the Bank of England in the centre. There is also a really tiny Britannia in the bottom left. The reverse features Matthew Boulton to the left and James Watt to the right. It also features the Soho Birmingham factory to the top and the Whitbread steam engine at the bottom. These two were partners and pioneers in creating steam engines. Matthew Boulton was a key manufacturer and opened many factories around Birmingham. James Watt created the most successful steam engine of the time, the Watt steam engine. with this engine itself being pivotal for the start of the Industrial Revolution. And now we have the current standard banknotes as of 2021. These banknotes were made out of polymer plastic for greater security. These banknotes also contain a huge amount of detail. Every pattern on these banknotes has some significance to the person on it. And because of this, I'm not going to go over every little design, I'm only going to go over the main bits. This is the £5 Winston Churchill banknote. The front of this banknote features Queen Victoria on the right and the Bank of England in the centre. It also features the Elizabeth Tower, also known as Big Ben, on the left, and also a tiny Britannia to the left. The reverse of this banknote features Winston Churchill on the right and the Palace of Westminster on the left. Winston Churchill is a former Prime Minister of the UK and saw us through World War II. He's also considered by many to be one of the greatest leaders of all time, and also the greatest British Prime Minister of all time. He also served in the Navy and is known to be a great motivational speaker. And what he's most known for is leading the Allies to beating the Axis powers in World War II, leading to the downfalls of fascist dictatorships in Germany, Italy and Japan. He also started the special relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States of America. Next we have the £10 note, Florence Nightingale. The front hand side features Queen Elizabeth II on the right and the Bank of England in the centre. The left hand side also features Winchester Cathedral, which is where Jane Austen is buried, and a tiny Britannia to the bottom left. The reverse features Jane Austen to the right and Godmersham House to the left. Godmersham House was owned by Jane Austen's brother, and she wrote many of her novels here. Next we have the JMW Turner £20 banknote. The front of this banknote features Queen Elizabeth II on the right and the Bank of England to the centre. It also features Margate Lighthouse to the left and a tiny Britannia to the bottom left. Margate was one of William Turner's favourite places to paint in all of Europe. The Turner Contemporary can also be seen behind the Margate Lighthouse. This houses many of William Turner's paintings. The reverse of this banknote features William Turner to the right and he's painting the Fighting Tambourine on the left. William Turner is one of the greatest Romanticism artists in the world and has made many important contributions to Romanticism paintings. He's also been voted Britain's favourite artist year after year according to polls. And the last Britain-wide banknote is the Alan Turing £50 note. The front of this banknote features Queen Elizabeth II to the right and the Bank of England to the centre. It also features a microchip to the left and a tiny Britannia in the bottom left corner. The reverse features Alan Turing on the right and the automatic computing engine to the left. This was the first general use computer ever created. Alan Turing was a mathematician who cracked the Nazi Enigma code. Some historians estimate that this ended World War II up to 5 years early. He also made huge contributions towards computer science and artificial intelligence, and also created the first concept for the modern computer. Be sure to check out my other channel, History Sticks, for the complete, longer and comprehensive video.